All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm so thrilled to see all of you here. It is really a rare opportunity that we get to be essentially your version of the tailgate before the Dreamforce party. So I appreciate you spend your pre-gaming time with us. Before we get into it, so day 2, show of hands, who's seen more than 6 of these? Well, good to see everyone's attending their sessions. That's great. We are going to talk a teensy bit about some future stuff. Make your decisions based on what we already have. So I'm Ian Glazer, Vice President of Product Management. I work on the identity products, look after everything from login.salesforce.com through our social sign-on, our registration tools, our strong authentication tools. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about how we connect to our customers. And I have with me an amazing partner in this.
My name's Chuck Mortimer. I help the teams who work on identity and security products.
All right.
If you've ever logged in or encrypted something or been challenged with like, hey, put the code into the browser to make sure it's you, that's what the teams work on. Yeah.
All right. So everyone who's at Dreamforce in one form or fashion wants to help their organization connect to their customer, whoever they may be, whatever capacity that is. And it's a great mission. Well, it's a mission we all share, in fact, but it's not always so easy, right? It's not always so easy because the channels in which you can connect to your customer are fragmented. And that fragmentation makes it tough on the customer, makes it tough on you. And the reality is that increasingly the way we interact with our customers is across these fragmented sets of channels. But the thing about that is, if I present to my customer an inconsistent experience, if I know them and I recognize them on a desktop browser, but I force them to really have a different experience or a different identity on mobile, I've shown I don't really know my customer. If their connected devices, if their IoT devices don't act on their behalf directly, I've presented a fragmented experience to them. I don't really know them. And the thing is, when that happens, our customers are likely to switch. They're going to take whatever awesomeness they were going to do with you, and they're going to take it somewhere else. And so one of the things that I'm most excited about the applications of Salesforce Identity and all of the capabilities we have is to help build that picture customer. Make it consistent. No matter what the channel of engagement is, provide that seamless experience. I deploy something once, it works great on desktop browser, it works great on mobile, it even extends into IoT, and we get that consistency. I demonstrate that I know who my customer is across all these channels. And when I do that in my brand, right? I'm talking to them in my voice, as my organization. Even if I'm a multi-product line business or multi-geography, I keep brand consistency across all those channels. And all the while, I'm learning who my customer is. I'm able to serve them better. So with that as just a little bit of backdrop, let's actually see what this looks like. Let's start over here. So here we have, look at the URL, it's a community, right? And let's think about this as the first place I have an impression to actually form a relationship with a customer. In this case, we're going to do it using Facebook. And Wi-Fi gods be with us. And Chuck left his Facebook session running, which is cool. So that login experience was super fun. Let's do that again. Because everyone likes like a good, solid run through of login experiences.
Well, that's how it's supposed to work.
And it's just magical, right? But okay, let's show you the real deal here. So
this is the beauty of single sign-on demos. In order to demonstrate them, you have to break them. So now we break it.
We do. All right, so pretend like those last few minutes did happen. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, look, I want to log on to Facebook because the last thing I want is another username and password because I have way too many of those. So I'm going to use Facebook. Great. And I'm going to log in here as Daisy. And this may feel like deja vu, maybe really weird, but like, look. Okay, so I'm signed in using social sign-on. What actually happened is I actually registered a user in this process, and I signed them into the community. Now imagine that could then unlock all of these other properties that I may have access to, or that as the person deploying the community, I'm granting access to. So let's see quickly on the admin side of things, what does this look like?
Did I not log into this browser either?
No, you didn't. Do you want to, I mean, we could turn the mics off and you could tell me
Why don't you use Lightning Login?
What? Oh, I could just do this.
Huh, I just got a push notification. This is the cool thing, Lightning Login. I don't even have to go over there and type my password. So little secret bonus feature for you today. This is something that you can all use in your orgs. I just got a push notification to my phone. Instead of logging in with a password, I can simply look at what's going on here and say, well, yes, this is actually Ian attacking my browser. And approve this, and I get to use my fingerprint in order to get a second factor of authentication. So I just thumbprint there, and you'll notice we are seamlessly logged in. So I didn't even have to get up and like fat finger my password a few times in front of you in this demo. Pretty cool, but you also can go turn that on for free in all of your orgs right now for protect your administrators, protect your users, give them a better experience, and have better security outcomes.
So let's look a little bit about how this happens. So we do a lot of these identity capabilities, these external identity things, through communities. It provides, if you will, sort of framework for us to present this to our customers. So here we've got a pretty basic org, and we have built one community in it, and we did a little bit of configuration. Those of you who have seen this session maybe last year or the year prior, like this gentleman, has seen the setup of this. What we're going to do is build on top of this, but I want to let you know what we already have in place. So in communities, two things we did. One is we said we want to use Facebook and Google as identity providers. That's just a checkbox. I'll show you how we get those choices in one sec. And what else did we do that's interesting here? We turned on registration. So again, a checkbox, say this is the account I want these users to be built into, the contacts to be built into, and what profile I want to assign to them. And a little bit of membership work. We built a custom profile called customers. It's based off the external identity license, and we added them to the community. So pretty simple, pretty thin community management. How I got that choice for Facebook and Google was through something we call auth providers. Now, auth providers are just a way to consume identities from another place. It tends to use OpenID Connect or OAuth to do this, and it's fully extensible. So the cool thing is we ship a bunch of these out of the box. So if you just want to get going and you want to test, go to auth providers, choose Facebook, give it a name. Let's see what this does. Always a good idea during demo. And I can basically save this, and I'll now enable Facebook login. Simple as that. Now, that'll have the Salesforce brand experience, and you can put your own credentials in there, your own key and secret, and get your own experience. So we had an org, we turned on a my domain, we had a community, we did a little membership configuration, and we said we wanted to use Facebook. That's what we've done. Now, if you had taken...
Do we want to show them how you actually get a user created in the auth provider? I think
Yeah, we
skip
can do
that
that.
part.
Let's do that.
So
that's a good thing to see. So one thing that auth providers provide is something called a registration handler. Let me embiggen that. So a registration handler is a piece of Apex that fires on login. And it tries to see if there's already a user that we know about, and if so, user logs in. Now on the way in, we can actually update the user record or the contact record because we're hanging out in Apex and we have that opportunity. But if I can't match that user, if I don't know who that user is, we actually just execute Apex to create the user. So this means you can create the contact, you can create the user that's associated with it, you could do all sorts of other things during this time, and we'll see some of the fun things you could do that. You can even invoke a flow to do this. So if you don't want to do this programmatically, you could actually do it declaratively. So reg handlers are super useful when you're consuming identities from other places.
So a good way to think about it is our engineers have done the work of connecting to Facebook or connecting to Google, connecting to Twitter. We're going to grab attributes as the user logs in and then hand it to you in that registration handler and let you do data modeling into your own CRM data model. So it can help you find your customers where they are, get them signed into the platform, but also create them as contacts, pre-wire them into your CRM system.
And one of the really handy things is if you've already got a ton of contacts, and let's say you've got email addresses on those contacts, during the registration handler process, you can go look for a contact with the same email that's coming from Facebook, let's say, and say, oh, this contact is this user. And actually, I can merge these things together so I don't end up creating duplicate contacts, for example. So there's some cool things you can do there.
How might you do all of this?
Well, the best place to go is the trailhead. So identity for customer trailhead, super useful. Basically takes you from an empty DE to essentially what you just saw. And Chuck and I have done it in under 35 minutes if you actually want to read every word in the trailhead, because I'm sure you read every single word in those trailheads and you then answer the questions and not guess. I'm sure that happens. But you'll get this org that you have, which is a fully functioning, ready to go consumer identity deployment. Basic, ready to go.
What if you don't like having fun while you're learning?
If you don't like having fun and you really like documentation, go check out the Salesforce Identity External Identity Implementation Guide. It takes you through gorier detail and less mascot-y detail on how to do this. It will go through your options, your configuration choices that you can make as for B2B versus B2C scenarios. It'll even go into some more advanced things that, well, actually, Chuck is going to show you in just a little bit. So this is the baseline. This is what we got to start. What we want to do with this org is start adding more capability to it. And where are we going to start, Chuck?
I think we should personalize the registration experience a little more.
Yeah.
Does that seem like a good place to start?
Do it.
All right, let's do it. So, like Ian said, all of you can basically go do that. Like when you walk out of here tonight, you can skip Alicia Keys. I'm sure it's going to be boring. You can go home, take those trails, and get right to where we are in this baseline. Now we're going to start adding on top of this, or you can do it tomorrow. So we're going to get out of slides, which is always fun, and we're going to get into some more live demo and configuration. So let's take a quick look at this registration handler that Ian was talking about. So if we blow this up a little bit, we're going to show what we did out of the box, and then how to augment this, but in a pretty special way where you don't actually have to write Apex. So in this reg handler, what happens is we get this map of data off of Facebook. And what this is kind of a normalized set of data. So regardless of the social network that you're connected to, we're going to try and grab these attributes for you and turn them into a common representation of what this user's identity is. Then you can figure out how to do it. So in our case, we're doing something pretty simple. We're putting them all into an account called customers. We're creating a contact for this user.
You could create a person account if you wanted to, too.
Yep. You could split them out across multiple accounts. It's basically up to you how you map these users. What we'll do for you is create one of these things by default. So we'll just give you one that is kind of there out of the box, and you can tweak it. So this is great, and this handles kind of if you wanted to write code for create user or update user, kind of create or update that user on the fly. But sometimes there's other stuff you kind of want to collect from users that you may not want to write here, or you may actually need user interaction. For that, we have something called login flows. So if you're not familiar with login flows, we're going to show you two things. Login flows are a way to add in the ability to take the user during the login process and put them into a custom business process. So very much the same way you might use Flow to build a custom business process for, say, a mortgage calculator or something like that. During login, we can take that user and take their session down to the only thing it can do is run that business process. So they'll log in, and we'll put them in that business process, and they have to step through that, and until they're done, they can't do anything but run that flow. Once they're done, we'll take them to where they were trying to get, whether that was our application, a mobile application, a single sign-on application into the community. Really can be anything from there. So this uses the richness of Flow, obviously, underneath. So Ian was good enough to construct us a flow here called Terms of Awesomeness. And you just built this declaratively. Now we do have some cool options coming to do this programmatically.
Don't spoil my slide.
Don't spoil your slide?
Don't spoil my slide.
We'll talk about that in the end then. But right here, so what happens is we look up the user that we're trying to get information about, and we're going to say, should we present the terms of awesomeness? And if we should, it's just a quick declarative check. So has the user accepted the terms of service, and it was beyond this particular date? Okay, well then we're going to put a screen in front of them and say accept the terms of awesomeness, and then have them confirm their email, and we're going to set a experience ID, we'll talk about those in a second, and get them on. It's a quick declarative thing. You can literally do anything you want in here. This allows you to customize our login processes. So in this case, we're going to collect custom T's and terms. You could do a consent model. Some people do 2FA.
Yep.
Some people tell their users of new features that they just rolled out in the latest release of their SFA deployment. It's really easy to use because you can just use the current capabilities you have for building declarative processes, but put them into login. So now, let's see how you do this. It's pretty easy.
You have to do this programmatically? Like, how do I tie this to a user?
It's easy. You go to the Login Flows button, or Login Flows page in setup, and we might create this like terms flow. And we'll say we're going to use the terms of awesomeness flow. You could pick a different flow if you had more than one. And we're going to apply this to our community license, I guess, in this case.
I think it's external.
No, we're going to use external identity license in this case, and we're going to use our customer's license. And we save this. And now what will happen is if we go through that experience, hopefully we'll see a flow. So let's come back here and log out Daisy. Remember, Daisy logged out and she went to Facebook, and then she went straight into the community. Now if I log in, we send her over to Facebook, but look what happens. We step in, still with the community brand, and now we're presenting that flow. So now this user has to step through this business process. So Daisy can read the terms of awesomeness and click this checkbox, and she can click next, and she can confirm her email. Does that look like Daisy's email?
I think that's Daisy's email.
Okay.
Feel free to send her email.
Yeah. Also, feel free to imagine what you can do from this. General business processes that when users log into the platform, in communities, you can do this with your regular users, you could apply this to just your admins, you could apply this to just your sales users in a particular region. It's a way to customize the business process of logging in. And now when she clicks that, she lands in the exact same place.
Yeah, so a couple things about login flow that are really quite handy. I'll give you a couple tips here. So Chuck touched on a couple of places where you can use it. You can pop it in my domain and on the community side. So you could use it for your employees, you could use it for business partners, you could use it for customers. You may do social registration, right? You may do something like a social provider that doesn't provide a lot of information, or it only gets the mobile phone number, for example, and you really need email address. You can actually ask for information progressively, what's known as progressive profiling. You can do things like present terms of service. You can present things like, what communication preferences do you want? Maybe you want the person to opt in to be emailed about something. You could present that to them right here. You even can do some really fun things with session security, like determine what session strength they have and change that programmatically. You do a lot of stuff here. Couple of tips. Login flows have to have a screen element. Doesn't mean the user has to see the screen element, but it has to have one. So this you can use to do all sort of behind the scenes processing. It may have a screen that you can never go to because of a decision node, but we still need to have one in there. Super huge tip, because this bit me when I was building this demo. Debug the heck out of your flow before you tie it to your sysadmin profile. Because if you screw it up, which I did, you're gonna like all of a sudden realize like, I can't get in anymore, which is super awkward if like you're building it. So have a spare session open somewhere, please do this before you
perhaps a different profile.
Or maybe don't put it on sysadmin. The other thing is you get a bunch of information pushed into the flow. These are flow variables that you get. So things like, what's the user agent? What platform are they coming from? You may have a business process that says, I don't want anyone coming in that's using Safari. I don't know why you would do that, but maybe you want to do that. You can actually write that policy in login flow.
Safari hater, huh?
I learned it from watching you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. All right, let's talk dynamic branding. Okay, so you've got a lot of...
What was that experience ID thing in the flow?
Yeah, you've got a lot of experience with this, though, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, so if we head back to communities, what we'll find is that where you would normally find the logo for a community, if you're familiar with communities, on login and registration, have something else. There's a logo URL now. So you could use the file-based version, or you can provide a URL. And this right frame here also has a URL in it. Okay? And you'll notice in here there's this little macro, kind of looks like a formula. And we'll even blow this up so that normal human beings can see it. Notice it says EXP-ID. That stands for Experience ID. Okay? Why would I possibly want this, Ian? Give me a use case.
Well,
what are we going to do with this?
So maybe Fix Coffee also has a chocolate business on the side. And so they don't want to deploy multiple communities for each of these businesses. What they want to do is have a single community because they really want a single place to present content. But they want to dynamically control that. So what they want to do is maybe substitute in what business that the individual is talking to and just change those assets on the fly.
So instead of like deploying multiple communities, they'd have one community and they could just have their CMS system, for example, swap in assets.
Yep.
Okay, you can kind of see where this is going. So if I were to deploy on our CMS server a bunch of different logos, each with a different experience. My different lines of business could all signal to the application, hey, here's who's logging in, and you can tweak it so that the experience is different depending on which application they're going to. We hear this over and over again from our large customers. Often the marketing team is saying, our end user is interacting with a particular brand, and that's the interaction we want to reflect or market or put an ad for or news about on the login experience. But we want that to work with single sign-on.
Yep.
We want it to be pervasive throughout their single sign-on experience. For example, we want it to apply to that flow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can take this experience ID and put it in your URLs. You can also put it in the right frame URL. You can also pass it to us over SAML, a popular single sign-on protocol, over OAuth, so it'll work with your mobile apps, over OpenID Connect, another popular single sign-on protocol. You can also even go directly to the login experience and just link to that. So, for example, if I were to be Daisy and log out, and let's say we're just sitting here on the login page. This is cool, but what if I wanted to become the coffee brand? I could change my experience ID to coffee. And notice that exact same page now has a different logo and a different right frame asset. Okay? And even if you weren't using, for example, our default page, because this is just the one that comes out of the box, super easy to point and click, customize, you could also just do this from Visualforce.
Yeah, absolutely.
And completely customize. So there's an Apex call. You can just say, give me back my experience, and then do whatever you want in code. That could be swap out the CSS. That could be a totally different login experience if you wanted to.
Yeah, and there's, there's some, let's pop over to slides. We'll talk about a little bit of this.
Well, I got a quick one more quick demo. We'll show you how this works through single sign-on. So if I were to head over here to the chocolate store, notice Heroku is going to compile my app at the moment, or spin it up. Okay, notice we're starting out here on our chocolate brand, not our coffee brand. This is our line of business. This is the fixed chocolate brand. They want the login experience to be chocolate. Notice my last experience was coffee. If I click login here, all of a sudden my login experience is chocolate. The line of business signaled to the central community, hey, take on the chocolate brand, and now all of my experiences are going to be chocolate, including if I go to Facebook and log in, notice that the chocolate brand carried, whoa. Well, okay.
Real demo, live code.
Yeah. This is my Heroku app that broke.
Yeah, I was about to say.
In fairness. So, but you saw momentarily that there was a cupcake above the, yeah. Okay, well, the danger of live demo.
There you go. So a couple things about dynamic branding. So the core message here is one community, multiple brand experiences. On the exterior of the brand. We'll pick up on that thought in a sec. You can do this in our identity protocols like SAML and OpenID Connect. You can pass it as a query parameter. It works on default login pages. And then you can use the site.getExperienceID Apex method to get it in a Visualforce page controller. And in the Spring 18 release, subject to forward-looking statement, you'll have this ability in embedded login. So if you're using our JavaScript library, which Chuck's going to talk to you about in a sec, to do single sign-on brokered from a web app, you can actually pass this along in embedded login. Couple things to keep in mind. Experience ID is stored as a cookie. Doesn't matter how you enter the process, whether you put in a query parameter or you do it in SAML, it ends up stored in a cookie. And so that site.getExperienceID is super handy. You can use it in your reg handlers. Now, why would I do that? Well, if I started on the chocolate brand, my registration process, the business logic associated with that may be very different than if I start on the coffee brand. So we not only can use this brand ID, this brand hint, to change assets, to change experience, we can actually use it to wholly shift the way we do our business logic too. Here's the cool thing, that EXPID substitution parameter, if you use it with a content management system, that goes a really long way. Added bonus, if you have played with Community's page variants, branding sets, and the audience tool, you can actually bridge the brand ID, the experience ID, into the community. So now imagine that the entire experience from where you started all the way through to drilling into a community now is not only in the experience that you need, but you're also hinting to the page variants. Load a wholly different page when I'm coming in on this brand experience. And that's really powerful because now we give you that consistency of experience. The customer sees like there's no break in the brand, there's no lapse of trust. It's a very smooth and easy experience. Now, one of the things I mentioned about the way we can use this thing is something called the embedded login. Chuck showed his awesome SAML login tool, but you don't always get SAML. Like, you can't always do single sign-on. What you may be able to do, however, is drop a little JavaScript in an app.
Yeah.
Should we do it?
Let's do it.
All right.
I think what we're doing here is really extending the concept of the marketing teams wanting more control over what's going on in the experience. So with dynamic branding, you kind of have this world where the centralized group might be running your identity system, but the marketing teams want control over the experience, okay? What we've found in our customers is that oftentimes they want to go further than that. Rather than taking everybody to a centralized page, sometimes they want to drop the login experience directly into an app.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the experience that you have in a lot of places where I've gone to an app and my sign-in experience is ingrained into that application, right? And that's the kind of experience that we want to deliver. So
you could link to it like this and say, hey, I'm the coffee brand, right? And that'll work. But what if I had a store like Fix Coffee? What if instead of putting a link in the, and we'll wait for Heroku to compile my app, which I probably should have done beforehand. What if instead of putting a link to the login page and taking them somewhere else, your marketing team came to you and said, how do we drop that same login experience right here on this page? Okay?
I mean, it's really reasonable. We get that a lot.
Totally reasonable. We're going to use something called embedded login. Okay? So embedded login is a JavaScript framework that is served up straight out of the community. You can just drop some tags into your site, and we'll figure out how to render a login form that's completely driven off the information on this page. So for example, if I add an auth provider here, it'll show up there. We basically read the metadata off the server, so you still get that rich declarative experience for setting up your community, but you can drop it right into this site. So there's a few things we had to do to set this up to make sure that we just don't skip over all the magic. The first is you get to deal with something esoteric called cores. Okay? What this is basically saying is we have to declare which sites we're going to allow this to happen to. We're setting it up so that your APIs will be able to talk to JavaScript on these third-party sites without violating some security fundamentals. So instead of opening up your community to the whole world, you get control which sites your community will talk to. So notice here we've declared our site is allowed to talk to fix-coffee.herokuapp.com. So you'd go do this for each of the places that you wanted your plugin to run. Okay? The other thing we've done is we've set up a connected app. So if you go to the app manager, you will see here that we have our, which one was it? I forget. I'm going to fake it and we'll just go to
This is where the demo gets real.
Okay, so we're just going to pick this one at random. This is our Fixed Chocolate app. I actually did this with a different one, but what we've done is we've come in here and we've set up OAuth. So I would say enable OAuth settings, and I would put in my callback URL, and I'm going to cheat and come grab my callback URL, and I'll explain what that is in a second. It is basically where we're going to send single sign-on messages. And I would have at least had to ask for this user's basic profile information. Okay? And I would save this, which I can save it right now. It's not going to hurt anything. This is the one that was broken anyways. So. And I get something called a consumer key. This is an identity for your application. Okay? I didn't have to do much here. I basically said, my application speaks a particular single sign-on protocol. I can have a chance to brand it and things like that, but I'm basically getting an identity for this app by saying what protocol it speaks and where it runs. Okay? And now we have a representation of this in Salesforce that we can grant to particular users, we can authorize, and when it connects over our APIs, we can tell which app is this? Is this user allowed to use this app? How do we audit who's using what apps? Okay? So we've set this up already. So now what we need to do is get our JavaScript. So we set up those two things. I then, in our app, have my page, which represents this page. Okay? And if you go read our documentation, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to give you a snippet to configure here. So I'm going to copy this snippet because I've already pulled it out of the docs, and I'm just going to paste it up in the head of my HTML. Okay? And you'll see this says, here's the community I'm connecting to. Here's that client ID for the app that I'm going to want to run as. Here's where I want you to send callback messages where I'm going to send identity for this user. This is where we'll redirect the browser. And then you've got a bunch of things that will control how the widget behaves without you having to do any programs. So for example, we're saying we want to run as a modal. This can run as a modal, it can run as a pop-up, so the browser can pop a new window. It can actually just get embedded straight into your page. All you do is tell us how you want it to run. We'll construct the HTML for you on the fly. We also then say, where do you want us to attach this? So we say, okay, find this element in your HTML, and we'll attach it to that. And then you can have JavaScript routines that run, and we'll fire events for you. So when a user logs in, you get JavaScript. When a user logs out, you get a JavaScript event. And you can totally customize what happens from there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and so what else do I have to do to make this work?
Well, two other things that are here. There's also your CSS. If you want to style it, you can totally take over the styling. We give you a default style. And then you have the actual source for the JavaScript widget. There's a couple other things you're going to want to do. We are going to want to put in some actual events, just so we can see something happening. So remember those JavaScript events got thrown? If I come back to my index page, I can just paste these in here. And now I have a really simple one. When I have established the user's identity, I'm going to throw an alert in JavaScript. Not too exciting. You're probably going to want to do something more interesting with that. That's the world's most basic demo. This is the hello world of getting logged in. And I can save this. And then we need to do one other thing. Remember that callback URL where we're going to send these single sign-on messages? We actually need to add what I added here. Now this can be something that runs on your server. This can be code like we're about to paste in here. So I'm going to create a new page. And I'm going to call it _callback.html because that is what I've called it through this. And once again, it's just pasting in some JavaScript. Just pasting in some HTML. So I paste in this HTML. You'll see it as a similar set of tags. What's the community I'm connecting to? I'm a modal callback. Okay. And do I want to save the access token for later? What domains are allowed? And here's the JavaScript. This will handle all of the SSO for you. So you didn't have to implement SAML. You didn't have to implement OpenID Connect or anything like that. If you're building a single page app, if you're building a marketing landing site, you can just do this simple operation, hand it to your web developers, and they can drop these login experiences on your page. Now, demo gods be willing, we've saved these two things. Through the magic of Heroku, we can get add and add our files and get commit demo time. And we'll get push Heroku master. Okay, I'm basically updating source control and saying, okay, push this out to Heroku. Okay. How this actually works in your world, this could be through a CMS system or something like that. But right now, the hipsters over at Heroku are whittling you a new dyno.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bespoke dynos. So I've got a customer who's going to use this on, they've got a bunch of microsites. Each of them have different product line sort of pieces of information, but they want a strong identity on these things. They don't want to have to bring the user somewhere else and then take them back to these microsites. They want it to be lightweight. So what they're looking to do is use this embedded login to provide an inline login experience that then unlocks the content that's on those microsites. It's super easy for them to deploy.
The other thing is Heroku's so fast, we don't need that much stalling time.
That's true.
It's already done.
It's amazing.
But way to cover for me.
He says
so if I just reload and notice, boom, login button in the upper right-hand corner. And if I click this, notice it replicates what's going on in my community. So it's pulled back that logo automatically from that CMS system. It knows I have Facebook and Google. If I were to say, head over and go back to communities and say add Instagram and Twitter and hit save.
This is off demo script, by the way. So
yeah, I wasn't supposed to do this. But if I reload and click login, uh-oh.
Oh, you know what that is? That's my Instagram icon is gargantuan.
All right.
Oops. Told you.
So we'll just try and add LinkedIn and reload and click login. And okay, so we didn't upload a logo for LinkedIn, but you see it's just because we're checking those boxes in community on this totally different site, we're actually reading that off of the server, dynamically updating the experience.
Yep.
Now,
does it work?
It should work. What should we expect to have happen? If I click Facebook, am I going to land in the community? No, I should get sent over to Facebook, come back through, there was that login flow I'd already approved, and boom, I'm logged in, and there's my alert. So obviously you're going to want to do something better than that, but you'll see within here, you'll see, hey, it's Daisy. There's her email address, or her username and her email address, and all this goodness. We even get her profile picture had she updated one. So
what's really cool is that this payload, what you get back, use it for personalization reasons. You can use it for authorization. You can pass custom attributes back in. So what you may want to do is make sure she checked the terms of awesomeness and actually send the Boolean back that she in fact did check the terms of awesomeness, because this site needs to know that. You can do a lot of cool things here, and you can also get the access token for her session, which means you can actually call back to Salesforce and do stuff on her behalf from this app. Right? You got a lot of opportunity here to do some cool stuff.
yeah, so if you wanted to add personalization attributes, you could just go in here, create a new custom attribute and say, I don't know, maybe you wanted to know Daisy's profile. That could be important for you. All of the stuff you know about formula and how you do declarative programming here just works in the identity systems just like any other administration task. So I could go into profile, get the profile name, insert it, and you could even do formula operations like profile is awesome, save it, and we'll just flow those attributes out to you.
Cool.
So with that, I think we'll move to a little close on embedded login.
Yeah, so a couple things about it. It's great, useful when you can't get a standard identity protocol in place. It's also really good if you've got a mandate from marketing that says the user lands on this site and they don't go anywhere. Right? That login experience can't redirect me to a community and come back, which is what standard type logins tend to do. Leave me on that experience. Works great for Heroku-based apps. Simple way to drop in a little bit of JavaScript in a Node app, let's say, and even do a server-side callback, which then means the server app can go and do stuff on behalf of the user. You can actually use this for platform-based apps. So I got a customer who's got a Visualforce page that has embedded login in it. You're thinking like, why wouldn't I just want to take them to the community? Well, in this case, they want to take the user through a very, very specific kind of flow, and they're actually going to use embedded login to start that process to happen. So kind of let your mind run wild on what you can do with this stuff. Couple of tips. Don't forget to set cores. You will pull your hair out if you're like, why is this not working? I'm getting 404s. It's because of cores. Server-side callbacks are super cool. They do open up all sorts of interesting integration options. Couple other hints. If for some reason you're like, I got cores set, I got this all set up, I don't see the button. I don't see any errors, I don't see the button. Humor me, pop open an incognito window and go actually hit the URL. There's a caching process behind the scenes, and if you get a cores violation sort of early on, that ends up unfortunately getting cached. You can change the cache age, and that's documented, but this is an easy way to test, like, hey, do I actually have this thing running? And don't forget, you can override the CSS. You want a different looking experience? Go nuts.
And I think it's also important, one other tip here is we covered a lot there, and I don't expect you to remember those steps from watching it. It's all docked. So the procedure we walked through has like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and I'll just walk you through it, and you can recreate this at home.
Yeah. So let's do this, Chuck. I'm going to talk a little bit about, just to recap, some of the things we saw, because we're running a little low on time, want to leave some time for questions. You all want to get on to the party as well. We've seen auth providers, right? Simple way to add social sign-on, control the registration process through reg handlers. You've got a lot of interesting things you can do with login flows, progressive profiling, ask for just a little bit of more data, or do consent through something like login flows. Super useful if you're starting to tackle things like GDPR. You've got a mandate from marketing that says, I don't want browser redirects. I want the user logged in, but leave them on that site. Use embedded login. And if you want to start showing multiple brands from a single community deployment, things like that experience ID or dynamic branding, really handy to use. So there is a ton of resources. When you go download these slides, you will get all of this good stuff. The identity for customers trail, super useful. That'll get you the baseline. The external identity implementation guide will teach you how to build on top of that like we covered. And if I can put in a plug for tomorrow, 10:30, I'm going to be sitting down with Ducati. You may have seen them in the community keynote. We're going to talk to them a little bit more about how they, on Sunday, like right before Dreamforce, globally rolled out a whole new experience for their business partners, their dealers, and for consumers. We'll see how identity helped them do that. And you'll hear from really the people that oversaw that, what that journey was like and their goals on that. So that's tomorrow at 10:30 in the App Cloud track, or platform track. I'll be sitting down with Ducati. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for spending a little bit of time with us. We'll stick around, do some questions. Have a great rest of the Dreamforce. Enjoy the concert, too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.